just look. I think that's pretty good right there. All right. Let's see what we got here. Questions for today. Okay. Oh, boy. Okay. Well, I mean, I said with this podcast, we're going to leave it wide open. And, we're not going to be, we're not going to, it's not going to be just hunting or fishing or whatever. It's going to be whatever. All right. So we got a few questions here. Instead of reading the question and from a person and answering it, I'm going to just read all of them because all this stuff ties together. Okay. Our family enjoys watching. Okay. This is from the Taylor family in Kentucky. Our family enjoys watching both your shows, Addicted and Spear Life. We know you and Gina have been married a long time and have raised 6 kids. We have. What's your thoughts on all of this kidnapping and sex trafficking that's going on? We are scared to death having 3 daughters. Okay. This is going to be Okay. James Neal out of Texas. Hi, John. We live in Texas. Our border's out of control, and we continue to hear from the government and FBI that there is a high concern about attacks on American soil. What's your thoughts on this? Okay. Let's see. There's one other one that was similar. Okay. Jerry Tyndall from Nebraska. What's your thoughts on what's going on globally and in this country? And what do you think will happen between now and the election? Okay. All righty. Let's jump into her. Okay, so to me, all of these things is intertwined. So I'm going to... I'm being asked my opinion. I'm going to give my opinion, and I'm going to try to do it not take 2 hours. Oh, my gosh. This is a lot for me. This is a hot button for me. Okay. So let's talk about sex trafficking, kidnapping. Obviously, if you're paying attention to anything, this stuff is out of control. We're a family that communicates. Okay, so we talk to our kids about what's going on. We have a plan. I'm sure I'll talk a little bit more about this as I get into everything we're going to talk about. But, we have a plan. We have an ABC plan. If something happens, like I said, we have family meetings. We talk to our kids, so about everything that's going on. And, we live right outside of Tampa, Florida. And I'm sure I'm not getting the statistics perfectly right, but I know that we're like number 2 or 3. We're high up on the list, here in Florida as far as sex trafficking areas. We've seen so many things firsthand, and I can't tell you. I probably can't tell you every person that we know as far as friends and even family members that have horror stories of being at Walmart, with their daughters, or Bell's or some outlet mall. And, all of a sudden there's 3 or 4 guys and they're following them and following their kids and this, that, and the other. And they can just tell something's up. And, they go outside and they follow them outside. They go back in, they call the cops, the guys take off. I've got personal stories from, again, friends and family, friends, people we know and family, of things that have happened right here in our backyard. So it's petrifying. Talking to law enforcement here, they tell us all the thing. I got some buddies of mine that they keep us up to speed on what's going on with hey, here's the tactics, and these are things to look for, and it's things like a zip tie on the rear passenger door. If you have a child, especially a daughter who is working late, can be in a vulnerable situation where they're by themselves. What these traffickers do is they have like spotters, and then they have the snatchers, and what they do is these spotters, or whatever you want to call them, they're out there finding girls, right? Okay, well, this girl works at a bar. She gets out at 3 a.m. She usually walks out by herself. Well, what they do is they put a zip tie on the rear passenger door. Well, that lets the snatchers know that, hey, this car's been marked, right? This is a girl we're after. So if you ever see that, well, someone's targeting your daughter or your son or whoever it may be. Them putting, like fentanyl on a tissue and putting it underneath the door handle. So, when they come out to their car, they see it and they grab it, right, to get it out of there, and boom, they're drugged. I mean, and it's fast. I mean, I've just literally seen videos of a police officer searching someone and touching fentanyl in their pocket, and seconds later, they're banged. They're laid out on the ground, getting a shot or whatever it is they give them to to get him out of it, or they're dead. It's petrifying. I would say, like the biggest thing for us is we communicate with our kids. Like, and look, over the past 3 years, specifically, my mentality has done a 180. I say this all the time, like if the Jon Brunson from 3 or 4 years ago could have a conversation with the Jon Brunson today, the Jon Brunson from 3 or 4 years ago, I'd be like, hey bud, I think you're getting a little, I think you're getting a little out there, bud. But it's a different ball game now, and I don't care who you are. If you live in this world, if you live in this country, and you're paying attention to what's going on, you know that this is a problem. This is an issue. I'd say that we're over the top concerned. Our kids are now old enough to carry their own guns. They obviously know how to use them. They have grown up hunting and shooting their entire lives. So that helps with a little peace of mind. But I'd say the most important thing we've done is not have them carry a gun. I would say the most important thing we've done as parents is just, over the past 3 years, when things were getting hot at certain moments, we were having family meetings. Sometimes we were having family meetings once a week, and then, things had kind of calmed down, and we understood that the kids understood, and then maybe it was once a month. But we had family meetings, right, where they understood the plan. Hey, if we, here's the plan. Because you assume certain things, right? You assume that if you send a text to all your kids going, get home right now, that they're just going to come straight home. Well, more than likely, they're not. If they don't understand what's going on, more than likely they're going to text you back, well, Mom, what's going on? Or try and call you. Well, what's going on? Why do I need to come home? I'm in class. I'm with friends. So, we've educated our kids, right? It's like, okay, if we send this text, if we send this text, you're straight home. I don't care where you're at, what you're doing. If you're in class in college, you stand up, say, I've got an emergency, and you leave. If you're with your friends, say, hey, something's going on. We're getting home. Boom, you go. Period. You come straight home. If you want to, while you're on the way home, if you want to try to call mom or dad on speaker while you're getting your butt straight home, okay. But they know to get home. We've got a plan A, B, and C. Plan A, dig in the house. Plan B, get into the woods. Plan C is top secret. It's the Brunson plan, that I don't really want to share. And it's really unique to us and where we live. It's not a plan that 90% of the people in this country can apply. It happens to be with just some geographical, advantages here. So we've got a plan A, B, and C. And, the kids understand what's going on, and they know how to react, and they're prepared for certain situations. Now, don't get me wrong. Like, we don't want our kids petrified, right? Our 3 youngest are in college, right? We want them, I'd lock them in the house if I could get away with it. Okay. But We want them to have a good time. Like we want them to enjoy college. They still live at home, thankfully, with everything, all the stuff going on. We want them to go to, we want them to enjoy college. We want them to enjoy being a kid. We want them to go out. We have a place in Tampa, Ybor City. It's world famous. It's kind of like Louisiana. It's kind of like Bourbon Street. It's red brick roads and bars and clubs, and you can walk all up and down the roads. And it's, when we were young, it was a fun place to hang out. And we want our kids to experience that. We don't want them to live in fear, okay? But we had to explain to them that this is a different world now, okay? I say it all the time. I think that the pinnacle to me of, I don't even know what you want to call it. The pinnacle to me of quality of life, clean living, like the best way to be raised, it was the 80s. I mean, I feel like that was as good as it's ever going to get. Not that everything's terrible, but as far as just how you were raised and how you built friendships and how you communicated and how the world worked, I just think it's hard to beat the 80s. But, we live in a different world now. And with our kids, it's, we want them to enjoy themselves, but we also want them to pay attention. And that's what I tell them. I'm like, look, just pay attention, okay? We try to drill certain things into their head, which I think we've done a good job of. Look, right now, when it comes to safety, okay, you got to be a leader, not a follower. If you're doing something and your friends, meet some new friends and they want to go do something and you just have the slightest instinctual gut feeling that you don't like it, don't go. Like, look, best case scenario, okay? So best case scenario, you missed a good time. Your friends give you a hard time. Worst case scenario is they go somewhere and something bad happens, right? And you weren't there because you made the right decision. I tell them when you're out, especially like Tampa, Ybor, you're out, man, people are in the streets, everybody's having a good time. A fight breaks out, right? Well, back when we were young, what'd you do when a fight broke out? You went over there and you watched, right? Well, we tell our kids, don't do that, okay? If you see a fight break out down the street, go the other way. Put distance between yourself, because more than likely it's just some kids fighting, but it could be something bigger. You go down there to watch, and next thing you know, things are erupting around you, and you're in the middle of something that you don't want to be in the middle of. So, use your instincts. Pay attention. Do not take a drink from anyone. I don't care if it's a water. Watch your drink. People are they're so slick now with what they are doing. Just teach your kids, let them know they can communicate with you. Let them know that, look, if they're ever out and something happens and they drink too much or something, that they can call you, that you're not going to, kill them because, they drank too much. I mean, a perfect example that, this past weekend was Gasparilla here in Tampa. Huge party. I want to say, I don't know how they qualify it or break it down, but out of like parade parties, it's like the third largest one in the world. It is insane. And, our daughter went with a bunch of her college friends, and they went early. Well, by 2:00, Raven's texting Dad, hey, I'm messed up, and you got to come get me. Boom. I mean, not a problem. I mean, GPS says 30 minutes. I'm there in 20. I go pick my daughter. I tell her, I got her location on, right? Because we got our kids' locations. And it's like, I'm like, you stay right there. You don't let anyone talk you into going anywhere else. I said, do you have one of your friends? I said, did one of your friends at least stay with you? Yep. Okay, awesome. So, I get there to pick her up. I really thank her friend and her boyfriend for watching her. She gets in the car with me. At this point, she's, kind of happy and loopy, but she's had a little too much to drink. And she's 21. Okay. So we had a great ride home, right? I mean, I'm cutting up with her and stuff, and she's like, it's, I just my nose, I can just smell throw up. She's probably gonna kill me for saying that, but it's it's, we had a good ride home. She got home, she got some rest, and she told me, she's like, Dad, I don't know. She's like, I haven't been drinking a lot really. And I'm working so much now and full time in school. And she's like, I really don't have time to go out and party because she just doesn't. And she's like, so I don't know, maybe my tolerance just isn't there. And she's like, or maybe someone gave me something. She goes, because I felt like I got messed up like really fast and I didn't really know what was going on. And thank God she had good friends and they stayed with her. And more importantly, she texted and called Dad, right? She told me that her friends were like, no, just come with us, because they're young. That's what they want to do. And she told me, she's like, Dad, they're like, hey, you'll get over it. Come on, just go. Let's go. Well, that was at 2:00 in the afternoon. That party just progressively gets more insane into the night. The last thing in the world she needed to do, not really knowing what was going on, was to go get in this crowd of hundreds of thousands of people, so she, the thing I'm most proud of is, she called Dad. Am I upset that she was down there and maybe she had too much to drink? No, she's 21 years old. She's in her third year of college and she's a great kid. But when when it happened, she called Dad and said, come get me. And that's, so it's good to try to have that kind of relationship with your kids. And again, there's no doubt that us having family meetings, keeping them up to speed on what's going on in the world and things that are related to this country, there's no doubt it's had an impact. And so I think that, that's extremely important. How many people out there right now who have a great relationship with your kids, if you sent your kids a text and said, get home right now, how many of them would just go straight to their car and come straight home? Or how many of them would text you, what's going on? Or call you, well, hey, what's going on? Like I'm in class, or hey, we're fixing to go out. Well, that's okay, but that's what kids do, right? That's normal, okay? You've got to, so I think if you shield your kids too much from what's going on, you create a sense of false security and you put them in a bad position. I believe, because we have done it, that you can educate your kids to be vigilant and pay attention to what is going on a little bit more than normal, but they can still go out and enjoy themselves and have fun. And unfortunately, I don't feel like this is really happening. And here's another perfect example. Raven came home from college, I don't know, it's probably been a few months ago. And she's like, Dad, she's like, I was in a study group at school with like 20 college students, and they were talking about different things kind of going on in the world, but like nothing serious. They're talking about like sports and this, that, and the other. And one of them said something about, something. Maybe it was, I don't know what it was. It was something kind of bad that had happened. And Raven's like, oh yeah, it's crazy what's going on in this world and in this country right now. And she said that 20 kids looked at her like she had two heads. And they were like, what are you talking about? Like, what do you mean everything that's going on? And it's not their fault, but they're just, they don't understand what is happening. And I think these younger kids and teenagers and college kids, it has to come from the parent. No one else is going to teach them. Okay. Because, again, I'm going to try not to just down the rabbit hole here, but look, your environment shapes who you are. Okay. As you raise kids, how you raise those kids and the experiences they have over the course of their first 18 years, yes, they have personality traits and different things, but for the most part, how you've raised that kid for 18 years is going to really kind of dictate the kind of person they are. It's like water over a rock, right? Water over a rock today, who cares? Water over a rock for years, it changes the shape of the rock. Everybody on planet Earth is a product of their environment, period. Your environment shapes you. And if you're in a certain environment constantly for long enough, it will change you. You will adapt to your environment. If you're in a super stressful situation for years, you're going to adapt to that stress. It's whatever it is, you're going to adapt to your surroundings. And I try to tell people when I'm trying to explain what's going on in a simple way, it's like we're in a glass bowl, okay? And the glass bowl walls is the reality that we're all living in. Okay, well, that reality, that environment is, I think we're all, look, again, try not to, I try to avoid certain points to where it's like, this is right and you're wrong. I try to explain things to just where everyone can get something out of it. So it doesn't matter who you're voting for, who's what, or it doesn't matter if you believe, our government's running this country or big money's running this country. It really doesn't matter. I think we're all smart enough to understand that our environment, our day-to-day environment, right, with social media and everything, is not really showing us, it's trying to keep everybody in a happy place. It's not, they are not educating us on what's really going on, which I think you got more of that from the news back in the 80s, not now. So if we're in this glass bowl, our environment's the glass walls. And when you look at the glass walls around you, you feel pretty good about what's going on. But that glass bowl is inside one more bigger bowl. Okay. And if you squint your eyes and you stare through that first layer of glass, right? And what I mean by that is just actually do some research, do some digging, figure things out for yourself. Don't listen to me. I mean, go educate yourself. But if you squint and look through that first layer of glass and you look to that second wall of reality, it'll scare the hell out of you, because the more you research what is going on with, again, what they're teaching in schools and the sex trafficking and the border being overrun and, borrowing money from another country to go give to another country when we can't feed the kids on our streets, when you can't take care of the veterans here. I mean, I was reading something the other day that there was 400,000, they said maybe 800,000. I know it was at least 400,000 veterans on a waiting list right now to try and get the help and treatment that they need. I mean, we have homeless out of control that get nothing but swept under the rug and sent to another block because the president's visiting. We've got kids in the street that are starving, and we're going to borrow. We don't have money to never in my life have I heard someone that has no money giving money away to other people to help them when they have problems in their home backyard. We're borrowing money from other countries to give it to another country. I don't, I just, it's, I feel like it's a Twilight Zone sometimes right now. I don't understand how I don't understand how the American people have become not the priority. So again, try not to get off on a total tangent here. Back to the kids. It's spend time with them. Educate them. Have a plan. Tell them, hey, if I tell you to get home, you get home. Avoid sketchy situations. Like I said, a fight breaks out, give yourself some distance. Don't. It's just times are changing now. So. I tell the kids all the time, I want you to have fun and I want you to enjoy being college kids. But I just want you to pay attention a little more than normal right now because things are not normal right now. And so that's the biggest thing I could say, when it comes to our kids, that we have our kids prepared for for different scenario, for all the different scenarios that we can think can happen. We have a plan and we have our kids prepared, but we're also letting them go and enjoy themselves. When Raven wants to run down to Ybor on a Saturday night and hang out with her friends, I mean, my gut is like, oh my God, I wish I could lock her in her bedroom. But it's like, no, babe, hey, go have a good time, be careful, and if you need us, you call and we're gonna be there. So I think that's real important. As far as this border, obviously look, we got a problem, and look, I don't have an issue with someone coming from a different country that wants to go through the proper channels and do the right thing. I actually know, I get to travel and do a lot of stuff, right? So I actually know numerous people that came to this country and worked hard to become American citizens, and they're great people. And they're more mad. I swear, they're more mad right now about what's going on than a lot of Americans are. They did it the right way. They earned it. And now, we've got people strolling in by the millions and getting money cards and cell phones and health care. And again, I don't, how does that take a precedence over taking care of a veteran that needs health care? I mean, it blows my mind. Okay. It blows my head off my shoulders. I can look at a lot of things, and I've always been able to look at other people's opinions that were different than mine. And for the most part, I could rationalize, okay, why they would think this. Yeah, we may disagree. I may be wrong. You may be right. I don't know. But I can understand where you're coming from. What's going on right now? Up is down, down is up, right is wrong, wrong is right. I feel like we're in the twilight zone. It is a bizarre, it's a bizarre thing that is happening in our world and in our country right now. And this border, I say it all the time. People think, look, we have a false sense of security in America. And it's just because we've been such a strong country and we've been a feared country. And so there's just this, again, going back to the 80s, riding your bike and going wherever you want. I mean, the things that I did as a kid, if my kids did it at that age, I'd lose my mind now. But it's like, when you look at this, this border thing, I tell people, look, if you don't believe that what happened, if you don't believe, if you don't believe what happened in Israel could literally happen here, then I don't know that you're paying close enough attention. There are millions. I mean, they're saying, 8 or 9 million in the last 3 years. I was watching a report on a legitimate news source the other day, as legitimate as it can be, because that's one thing about me. If I see something pop up and I read it, I don't freak out and go share it. I go find, I want to go find 3 or 4 sources that say, hey, this is real. And then I can understand, hey, this is real. Because, 3, 4 out of 5 times it's not real. But I saw a report the other day on one of the news agencies how they've done some kind of a census to try and get a feel for like how many illegal immigrants are really in this country. And who knows if this is accurate or not, but they did this deal where they checked it and they estimated that it's north of 22 million. Okay. Insanity. Now, let's just forget that for a minute and let's just talk about the 8 or 9 million that we know come across in the last 3 years. It's mind-boggling. Again, I have no problem with someone coming here and doing it the right way. No problem. Thousands coming across at one time being handed food and water and cell phones and money cards and not going through any type of process and just cruising on through and piling and sneaking in the night. I mean, obviously that's not a good thing. And I just, what's going on right now, obviously with Texas, and it's hard to wrap your head around it. It's hard to wrap your head around the fact that Texas is trying to secure the border and the government is literally fighting them to open it wide open. And again, don't get me wrong. If Texas is protecting the border, there was a story about, a wife and a child drowning. Okay, look, I believe that our servicemen protecting the border right now in Texas, I believe if they see a woman and a child, drowning, they're going to help them. Okay. I mean, we're human. You got to do, there's just certain times you got to do the right thing. But, stopping the masses from piling through and saying, look, if you want to come, you've got to go through the proper channels. I don't understand why everyone doesn't understand that. And, I got sent this video from a buddy of mine the other day, and I was like, I mean, Well, and of course I went and I took a few, because I went and searched it to try and see, like, okay, how real is this? I couldn't find anything at first, and then within a few days I saw two different news sources, again, like mainstream news sources, show this video and report this video. So I'm at the point where, it's where a reporter questioned an illegal immigrant coming across the border, and the video blew my mind. So I'm gonna play this video. If you watch this on our YouTube channel, you'll be able to see it. If not, you can listen to it. All right, here we go.
I don't know who this guy is, but he seems to think he's somebody.
Please, by the way, if you are smart enough, you would know who I am. But you are really not smart enough to know who I am. But soon you're gonna know who I am. You're gonna know who I am. Very easy. Wow, very easy. The entitlement. The entitlement. No, believe me, I'm much better than that.
What should really concern you
Okay.
is why a guy that seems so educated.
Okay. So what's important is just listening to what this guy said. Okay. Number one, like, to me, I would think if you're an American and you're concerned about the safety of your country and your kids and your family and your way of life, to me, you come to one conclusion here. Okay, this is just me. This is just my opinion. This isn't someone coming across the border looking for a better life. Okay, this is an extremely arrogant. I'm gonna guess by his accent and the way he looks that he's from an Islamic country or wherever. I don't believe he's coming from Mexico looking for a better life. But this reporter, asks him who he is, and I mean, first of all, I break this down into two pieces. Number one, he's like, you don't know who I am. You're not smart enough to know who I am. You're not smart enough to know who I am. And if you could see the look on this guy's face, just the arrogance and just how he just talked down to this guy. Okay, well, let me translate that for you. This guy is a terrorist, okay? And he's more than likely, wherever he's from and whoever he's a part of, he's probably high up. This is probably a dude that is very high up, that has a lot of respect where he comes from, and he's used to talking to people this way, okay? That's what it is, period. The fact that you don't know who I am, okay? And then part two, you're going to know who I am soon. You're going to know, with this total arrogance and just talking down to this guy, him saying, you're going to know who I am. You will know who I am. Okay, well, let me translate that. He's going to do something, okay, that is going to be big enough that he's confident this guy that he'll never see again for the rest of his life will know his name, okay? So, he is saying, what he is saying is, I'm going to do something, and then y'all will know my name. So this blows my mind, okay? I mean, how many of these guys have been through, if there's 22 million? How many of these guys have gotten through if there's only just the 8 or 9 million they know of, over the last, 3 years, or the 200,000 or 300,000 getaways or whatever they call them, which is probably a whole lot higher number than that. I don't, it blows my mind that, the FBI or whoever doesn't just, there's like, a couple of minutes of this guy, right? Minute and a half of video. It's like, it blows my mind that, like, the FBI isn't all over this. Like, they don't do face recognition, figure out who this guy is, if he is somebody, and then bam, put out whatever you got to put out to, hey, we're looking for this guy. Like, I don't get it. Like, I don't understand, I don't understand why this isn't everywhere, and why law enforcement, whether it's FBI, CIA, whoever, I don't understand how one single person, say at the FBI, can't look at that video one time and say, boom, we got to go figure out who this guy is. So so yes, to answer these, these questions, it's petrifying. It's one of those things where you have to, you have to kind of stay on top of enough information so that you don't get caught off guard if it's possible, but you also can't let it consume you. And that's another lesson I learned. I remember a couple of years ago, I'm talking to some of my buddies, and I was really starting to go down the rabbit hole, right? And I'm really researching everything Oh, I talked to a couple buddies of mine. Well, they were about a year ahead of me, right? And I didn't know it then, but they're like, "Hey, man, John, listen, man, just be careful because it'll consume you." Oh man, it's not going to consume me. I'm just trying to stay on top of enough information, to make sure I'm on top of things, man. But it's not going to consume me. I mean, next thing you know, it was consuming all my spare time that I didn't have to give. So I had to pull myself out of it, and I had to kind of make a decision. Okay, I am going to pick just some key sources, right? Okay, just some Tucker Carlson, just who just some, just some specific people that I have faith in. Whether it's guys that have podcasts, whether they're on the news. So I kind of got my little assortment together of people that I feel like I trust them and they've got their pulse on what's going on. And, I kind of follow them and I get information from them. So I took my information overload, that was coming from, 1,000 different directions. And I cut that down to 10 directions, 10 sources. And that's when I had to kind of realize, okay, look, you got to get up every day, put a smile on your face and do your job, right? And you can't sit here and just freak out and stress so much over tomorrow that, you're ruined today, until something happens or until something happens where you feel extremely confident, hey, you got to do something different than you get up with a smile on your face and go to work. Until that happens, you've got to get up, put a smile on your face and go to work. And so I had to cycle through that. And it's funny, I run into those buddies later. I'm like, you're right. I had to learn. And they just laughed because it's like that we all went through the same process. So, I definitely condensed my information flow down. I want to stay up to speed as best I can on what's going on. But just like trying to educate my kids, but not have them live out of fear and let them go enjoy being college students, I had to adjust the amount of time I was spending on it and the amount of information I was digesting, so that I could get back to, making sure I'm doing my job and, being a husband and being a father and, again, not letting this consume you. And when you start talking about everything that's going on in sex trafficking and you have kids and, especially daughters, I mean, it is difficult, when you hear stories from a friend or a family member, how they were cornered in a store by 4 guys, or some guy tried to, surround them in a parking lot. I mean, it's tough. So, I guess my thoughts, I don't want to say advice, but my thoughts on these questions, is yes, I think bad things are happening. I think that as everyday citizens, we're a little more educated now than we were years ago. But man, I there's so much going on that we just don't know. What do you believe anymore? What is real? What's not real? I mean, who knows? I don't have all the answers. I know bad things are happening. I know that our country needs to get more healthy. I know that sex trafficking is an issue to the point where you've better pay attention and speak with your kids. I believe that, we have an issue with our border. So there's some things that are just, they are what they are. But again, all you can do is, what do they say all the time, right? Prepare for the worst and hope for the best. So the Brunson clan, I mean, that's been our philosophy for about 4 years. Hey, we prepare for the worst, and hope for the best. And so, I'm genuinely concerned about what's happening. And I think this year, I believe 2024 is going to be a year unlike anything anyone's ever seen. I think there's a strong chance that 2024 is going to dictate the entire direction of our country. And so, it's, and again, with me and Gina doing what we do for a living and traveling a lot, it's been stressful, especially the last couple of years. I mean, we were moving trips around, we were canceling trips. I mean, when the attack on Israel happened, we were 2 days away from heading to our first hunt of the year, which was Kentucky. And I pushed the hunt, or it was actually the first Kentucky hunt with our son, a muzzleloader hunt. We'd already done our early season hunt when that happened. And so we were into our hunting season. And this thing happened in Israel, and we were a couple days away from leaving for Kentucky, taking one of our twins muzzleloader hunting, and I moved the trip into December because I'm like, we're not going anywhere right now. So, my biggest fear is to be, across country and something happen, and I'm not there to take care of my family. So, it's a juggle, it's a balancing act. It's a balancing act of trying to be a husband, a father, get up and do your job, try to enjoy yourself, and enjoy what what we have now and the time we have today. But also be prepared, to take care of yourself and your family. And so that would be my thoughts and I guess some advice. Again, I think the biggest piece of advice is speaking to your kids and having a plan and just making sure they understand certain things. We were all raised, especially my generations, we were just raised where you listen to adults and you do what you're told. And it's a different ballgame now. So, I think that, the biggest thing I could say if you're going to walk away from, this podcast is communicate with your family, and do your own research. And based on your research and who you're responsible for, have a plan together that you're confident in. And, if you can at least do that, I think that you're probably a step ahead of most. So, with that, I think I'm going to call it. I don't know how long I've been going here, but I think I'm just going to pull the plug there because I can be on this for hours. So hopefully again, guys, you got something from this. If anything, as families, maybe you'll talk to kids a little bit more or have a basic plan. But hopefully somebody gets something positive from this. And with that said, I'm going to wrap it up. And thanks for checking out Straight Talk with Jon Brunson.